Second reading this morning is Matthew 13:42 to 52. Jesus tells a group of parables about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down and put the goods in baskets, but threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all of this? They answered, Yes. And he said to them, Therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old.
Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. And that's all I have to sing, right? Because you know the story of Jed Clampett, an impoverished mountaineer who was out hunting for food for his family one day and struck oil, became a millionaire, and moved his family to a mansion in Beverly Hills, California. And for the next 9 years, America enjoyed the escapades of the Beverly Hillbillies. We still are, really, with reruns. Now, it was never clear from where these hillbillies actually came. They claimed to be from the town of Bugtussle in an unspecified state. Most people just assumed it was probably Tennessee or West Virginia, of course. But there was never any evidence to support that. There is a Bugtussle, Oklahoma, but the terrain there isn't consistent with Jed being a mountaineer. Now, in some episodes, when they talked about back home, they made reference to the nearby towns of Joplin, Branson, Springfield, and they even talked about Silver Dollar City on occasion. Granny, in one episode, said that she was from Taney County. So let's not get too uppity, folks. The Clampetts were our neighbors. Now, here in southwest Missouri, it should be easy for us to relate to these parables Jesus tells about farming and fishing. Jesus used things that were familiar in everyday life and wove tales in a way that made folks stop in their tracks and look at life in a whole new way. Today's reading starts with a man, perhaps not unlike Jed Clampett, out looking for food for his family, who finds a hidden treasure in a field. The text does not say what it was, probably not oil. But unlike Jed, he didn't own the field. He sold all he had to buy the field in order to own the treasure. Our second parable may have inspired John Steinbeck's short story, The Pearl. In Steinbeck's story, a destitute fisherman in a poverty-stricken village in Mexico discovered a pearl that was, without question, the largest, most perfect pearl in the world. But it only brought tragedy to his family. In his struggle and pain, he had to determine the real priorities in his life. Finally, deciding that peace of mind and family were the most valuable things to him, he threw the magnificent pearl back into the sea. But honestly, is it really that easy for us to relate to these parables? The first one concerns treasure hidden in a field, but most of us don't hide whatever treasures we have in a field. People in antiquity sometimes buried valuables, especially when invading armies threatened or when the social world was in chaos. And sometimes they died before telling anyone where their treasure was buried, and other people would find it. This was back before the days of safe deposit boxes and insurance policies. In fact, I remember hearing about my great-uncle Jesse, who buried money in his backyard. And when my grandfather died, we actually found money hidden in his house. And if we found a magnificent pearl, we might take out a second mortgage to buy it, but we wouldn't go out and sell all that we had. Culturally, things are just different now than when these scriptures were written. If the parables were being written today, Jesus might have said that the kingdom of heaven is like an Olympic gold medal or a winning lottery ticket, or fill in the blanks. It's always about what we don't have and don't have much hope of getting. The grass is always greener on the other side, right? Or as Irma Bombeck put it, over the septic tank. Hear another story, a parable of sorts. A young boy and his parents lived in a cottage on a hillside overlooking a wide valley. In the evenings, the boy would gaze across the valley to a house far away on the opposite hillside. Just as the sun was sinking, the windows in the house would burst into a dazzling glow of golden light. He decided that the people who lived there must be perfectly happy. So he set off one day to find the house with the golden windows. After traveling all day, he finally came upon a plain cottage with ordinary windows. It was getting dark, and the family that lived there offered him supper and a bed for the night. As they talked that evening, he told them about his search for the house with the golden windows. Yes, they knew about it and would show it to him in the morning. He could hardly sleep that night. At dawn, he was awakened by the sun and singing of birds. And pushing the curtain aside, he looked out across the valley to the opposite side, and there he saw his own home, the windows flashing with gold in the morning sun. T.S. Eliot wrote, "And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive at where we started and know that place for the first time." Human nature dictates that no matter where we live, on the evening or the morning side of the valley, we long for the other side, and we continue to search. In these two parables, Jesus compares that which is most valuable to the kingdom of heaven. Indeed, in Matthew's gospel, he mentions the kingdom 35 times. And perhaps that is the most difficult thing for us to identify. Every week we say the words in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come." But what do we really mean by that? Maybe the best way to understand it is not to look at images and experiences from the first century, but at those in our modern lives. Think of the most precious thing in the world to you. Most of us would say that it is a person or persons. And in times of trouble, we take stock of what is most precious to us. And it causes us to reorder our priorities. The kingdom of heaven doesn't have to be elusive. We just have to know where to look for it. For many, it is an otherworldly place where they hope to go after they die. For others, it is the realm of God here on this earth. One writer suggested that maybe how we imagine the kingdom of heaven depends a lot on what we need it to be. The 16th century Spanish mystic Saint Teresa of Avila wrote, "How can I explain the riches and treasures and delights found when the soul is united to God in prayer? Since in some way we can enjoy heaven on earth, be brave in begging the Lord to give us his grace, in that he shows us the way and strengthens the soul, that it may dig until it finds this hidden treasure. The truth is that the treasure lies within our very selves." Indeed, Jesus said, "Behold, the kingdom of heaven is within you. If with all your hearts you truly seek me, you will ever surely find me." The kingdom of heaven is a treasure hidden within each of us. And if we look deep enough into our hearts, we will surely find it. It seems elusive because it is not something tangible that we can grasp with our hands. It may appear in many forms. Joy in knowing that relationships matter more than things. Peace in knowing the one who loves us as we are. Or assurance that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Jesus' parables remind us that the faith we embrace and the kingdom we believe in isn't an intellectual idea, but the experience of the creative power of God that continues to change us daily. Maybe he tells so many parables about the kingdom because we need to be reminded that it's there. They remind us that even though we cannot see the kingdom, it is near. Like the buried treasure in Jesus' parable, the kingdom of heaven is hidden and must be discovered. Like the pearl, it must be sought to be found. Notice that the emphasis in these two parables is not on the finding, but on the human response to the discovery. In each case, the finder sells all he possesses in order to own what he found. But the kingdom of heaven is not something to be purchased. It is God's gift to us. It cannot be acquired and held as a permanent possession, for it is not of the material world. Rather, the kingdom of heaven is within us. It does not require selling all our material possessions because it cannot be bought with money. And yet, it is the most valuable treasure that we can find. Those who understand that will commit themselves wholeheartedly to the eternal search for it. May God give us wisdom to understand the kingdom of heaven and grace to embrace it. Amen.